Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Shirtless Plantain Show, the Arsenal edition. This is your season review for the season just ended, 24-25. Your host today is Dean. And per usual, I'm here with Coach. What's going on, Coach?
I'm doing good, man. All thanks to God for everything. Thank you for creating Arsene Wenger. And yeah,
And would you do us a pleasure of introducing our friend?
uh, our great friend of the pods, Sir Elliot Ross, first of his name. Avid contributor to the media landscape, whether it's current affairs or unique, and I want to say really, really thoughtful football analysis. Yeah, Mr. Elliot Ross, how are you, sir? It's been a while.
Thanks, Coach. That's very generous. Yeah, good to see you guys. I've been listening to you a lot, so it's nice to be back.
Always a pleasure. Our pleasure is always ours. Thanks for hopping on for the season review. Where to start? It was a long season. It felt long. I feel tired, guys.
Yeah.
Like I was done with this season in like December, to be honest with you, but I committed to a podcast, so I've been here the whole time.
I
Well,
think it was
let's go
the
on.
Havertz injury. After the Havertz injury is a bit of a slog, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was the moment. That was the moment because it happened in Dubai, guys. In Dubai. What the hell? Anywho, let's do a quick recap of the season before we get into the nitty gritty of questions and answers and Elliot and Coach and me shutting the fuck up. In terms of the league, we finished second for the third time in a row. The only other team to have done that was Arsene Wenger's Arsenal from 98 to 2001. And that in the Champions League, we got to the semifinals, our best showing since losing in the final back in 2006. To which I say, fuck Paris as a club and a city. The FA Cup was a third round loss to the hated ones. I'm not going to say their name. It was 3-5 on penalties after a 1-1 draw that we should have won pretty easily. But, you know, the variance gods weren't with us that day. And we lost in the semifinals of the EFL Cup to our fake rivals from the sandy lands of Saudi Arabia, Newcastle United. Highs and lows, guys. I guess this is where we can start asking questions and whatnot. Elliot, what was your most memorable moment of the season?
The Real Madrid tie. Actually, yeah, I'll go with the Real Madrid tie. Both legs. I was very lucky, like Coach, to be out the second leg.
Yeah.
I believe.
And we didn't get to meet.
I know. We were running around in opposite directions outside the Bernabeu. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the first leg was like an out of body experience, especially with free kicks. And the second leg, yeah, unbelievable. I remember very clearly watching the 2006 game. So being there for that was really surreal, especially like the symmetry between some of the goals over that like 20-year period. So yeah, I think that was my moment of the season. Other than that, I think the Man City home game. And honestly, not really the scoreline of the performance, but Myles and Ethan in that game.
Yeah.
That was when I really started to land what's been added.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably my highlight of season 2. Coach, anything he didn't mention?
No, I think those are mine. The North London derby at home as well, I think was great as well, because it wasn't a shit time. Like that whole mixture of fixtures was just horrible, and we just didn't let them get one on us, even though we're going through shit. And Myles in that game as well was just fantastic in that game. The fact we went behind as well, and that's been an issue for Arsenal going behind in games this season and not being able to fully recover. The fact that we did, yeah, that was probably my highlight, along with the Real Madrid games, obviously. And yeah, it was weird in Spain. Like when you asked me where I am, like it was so weird because like, hold on a second, what? Why is Elliot asking where the hell I am? Then he sends a picture of him outside the stadium. I'm like, hang the fuck on.
Oh, travel friends. All right.
Yeah.
Some other fantastic moments. I'd say for me personally, the Calafiori goal from the first leg of the Man City game. Like I just really liked the new signing introducing himself like that. The Raya double save away at Atalanta was pretty great. I was like, Now they can't argue about Ramsdale anymore. They have to stop this. The 5-1 win at Sporting was great. The 7-1 win at PSV was fantastic. And of course, Madrid. Obviously, Madrid. Some key moments. I feel like we're already. Did we talk about Havertz before we started recording or after?
It was before we started recording. To
Okay, 'cause I think that's the moment when most, on a call, smart fans, no disrespect to anybody else, I feel like that's the moment when most of us kind of gave up. We're like, okay, this is too much. Like, we surely can't get through this. But Elliot, before you gave up on the season as a whole, like, what would you say was the most significant turning point prior to giving up on the season, when you started having doubts that we could actually meet the expectations this season?
It was very early. It was the Declan Rice red card against Brighton, which was just such bullshit. I think the weird thing at that point was that it had really compounded, with the further decisions that we then got down the line. As it went on, it just became more and more farcical with each of these decisions being given. But I think at that point, we were obviously expecting City to, do like a 90+ point season. So dropping any points at home was looking really costly even at that stage. And it was just like, it was the fact that it was Rice as well. So like Rice is obviously the current and future England midfield, probably the next England captain, and they're still going to ref him like that, which is just complete nonsense. Yeah, it was kind of difficult to come back from that as a season. I think probably one thing the team needs to think about for next season is how to respond. And to be fair, they've responded pretty well to these kinds of setbacks. But in terms of, I think most Arsenal fans would say that was one of the moments where you start to feel like it wasn't going to be our year in the league, regardless of quality. Obviously, not knowing about all the injuries that were going to come down the line, but you rarely get a moment like that in a season that ends really well. So yeah, start to feel bad, start to feel a vague sense of dread at that point.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. But I would say my first doubts came in when they finally closed the Merino signing. Then Big Gabby crossed.
Oh wow, that's early.
Yeah, that's when I started thinking. I was like, that's not a good omen. Coach, how about you?
I want to say, yeah. Actually, no. To be honest, I think it was the Odegaard injury because he never gets injured, and I feel like he was the first because Marino is Marino, right? But he was the first one. Once your captain goes down, kind of thing, and then we're hearing rumors of Declan Rice's toe being broken for like 2 or 3 weeks before that Chelsea game, kind of thing as well. And then when Odegaard comes back for that Chelsea game, and he's literally playing on one leg for that game as well, and still walks away with an assist or hobbles away with an assist, kind of thing. Everyone else started breaking on afterwards. After that period, and that was like, oh, come on, man! Like, you're not gonna do anything. Like, you can absorb one. Like, you can absorb one major injury to one major player, one max. But when it's your spine, yeah, your spine and then on top of that, your best player, that's when it's just like, yeah, it's too much, man.
Spinal. I broke my back. I'm gonna do a list of what I would consider misfortune from this season.
Oh God,
what's that, Elliot?
You have to.
It's the season review.
I don't want to remember this.
I guess, yeah.
I don't want to remember this shit.
So there was the Merino injury, there was the Brighton red, Declan Rice, there was the Odegaard injury, there was the Tomiyasu injury, which is understated, but when you think about it, his absence led to more work for everybody else. So that's never a good thing. There was the Ben White injury / surgery. There was the Trossard red. There was the Saliba red away at Bournemouth, which cost us in that game and the subsequent game against Liverpool the next week at the Emirates.
Sorry, can I just say as well, the fact that 24 hours later, almost exactly 24 hours later, I think it was Tosin for Chelsea did the exact same thing away to Liverpool and got away with a yellow card. That really rubbed me the wrong way because neither of them are red cards to me, but the fact that you make one decision one day and listen, 24 hours later you make a different decision for the same thing, it blew my mind, honestly, man.
Hey, man, different refs, different outcomes. And besides, Tosin's darker than Saliba, so, take a win where you can get it, buddy. Take a win every so often. Wolves away. This is probably my least favorite of all of them.
Miles.
Not that I like any of them. Yes, the Miles Reg from Michael Oliver that lets the pylon on a very, very wonderful child. Elliot, I get the sense that you have thoughts on this matter and the whole treatment of Myles Lewis-Skelly throughout the season.
Is this where we're going to talk about Miles, or are we going to talk about him?
We're
Is
going to
it
talk
not a
about
slot?
Miles. We're going to talk about him, but the treatment separately from his performance.
The treatment. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one. Maybe I think this podcast is very well placed to talk about this issue in a way that I haven't really seen properly, kind of bottomed out by other media. I think there's been some, like you guys probably covered it already really well, but in the kind of broader mediascape, there's a bit of insinuation that, like, maybe race is an issue here. Maybe that's part of what's going on. I want to read you something.
Maybe.
I want to read you something Ian Wright wrote in Black Arsenal. The book that came out earlier this season. It's really good, and I think sitting down to put this together, he was probably, he was telling the whole story of like how he came to Arsenal, David Rocastle, what Arsenal meant to him, the kind of intricacies of like South London, other parts of the country, how that all links to like Thierry Henry. It's a complex picture that he paints here. But one of the most compelling bits that I found in his reflection was he said, I would get booed with every touch and people wanting to have you booked, and referees calling you over every minute. For certain referees, a black man like me is kryptonite to them because they can't deal with someone like me because I'm not afraid of them. And that was like the strongest explanation I've seen of what has happened and will keep happening most likely next season to Myles Lewis-Skelly, because there's clearly something about him specifically that these white English refs cannot deal with. It affects them in a visceral way, and they lose their reason. They lose their training. They have to resort to an exercise of authority in the most drastic way at great personal, professional, not personal, but professional risk to them. It's humiliating for them. They make the wrong decision. Everybody can see it. It's a complete mystery. Nobody's seen decisions like this against any other player like what Michael Oliver. It's not, again, is it coincidence? Michael Oliver, he's our top ref. Everybody says he's the top ref. So he's saying, I'm the top guy, I'll deal with Miles. And it's linked to lots of things, right? Like it's linked to the PGMOL and how, this is something familiar in British society more broadly, these institutions that are just way past it. They're just not fit for purpose anymore. They're staffed by the wrong people. They're all in a clique. There's not proper accountability. There's not proper standards. There's not proper training. There's not even a minimum level of like unconscious bias training ceiling, as far as we know. Maybe that goes on some level, but come on, if you've got like a load of white guys from the same part of England, how much is unconscious bias training really going to change much? Where am I going with this? I think it's linked to lots of other things that we saw that, like, why is Miles such a controversial figure in English football? All he is an absolutely phenomenal player. Like one of the best 18-year-old. He came 17 at the start of the season, wasn't he? Is that right? And he's played half the hard half of the season and a bit more out of position against the best players in the world, and nobody's dribbled past it. And in the PSG tie, the first leg, in both legs of the Real Madrid tie, he was a decisive player, and not in the way that Declan Rice was decisive, but tactically, Arteta went into both those ties and used Miles as the piece that they would not be ready for, and the piece that they would not be able to predict and plan for. So why are we talking about, indiscipline or whatever it is we're supposed to be talking about? And why is everybody pretending to panic when he mocks Erling Haaland? It's like a hierarchy thing, What he did with Haaland was really funny. Obviously, it was hilarious. And this is entertainment, right? And I love that, like, him and maybe some of the younger players in our team and other teams have almost like this kind of like NBA sensibility to just like, it's not, you put it on your opponent, you tease them a bit when you're on top. It's not the end of the world. Like they can give a bit back next time. Nobody has to panic. But you have the panic around the Haaland thing, and then the response to that. Was there a Haaland thing? The Haaland thing was after his red card at Wolves or before? I can't
It
remember.
was before. It was before.
Was it before? Yeah. That was my sense, was that there was, you saw these absolutely, I know I'm going on a bit. You guys should comment.
That's why you're here.
Absolutely insane comments from people like Carragher. And I think that's, again, you've got like the PGMOL. I'm not doing a mad conspiracy theory. I'm talking about different organizational cultures. You got the PGMOL, who struggle, to put it mildly, with a young black kid who's brilliant and who just doesn't care about the existing hierarchies. He comes in and he says very eloquently in every interview, "I'm here."
Sorry. It was after the red card.
Was after.
The red card was before the 5-1. Sorry.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think I still see it all very like connected, to be honest, in terms of how people respond to him. Carragher said he needs to be taken down a peg or two, didn't he? Carragher said it was that he speculated that Arteta had put him to, he had to get changed with the junior team because he didn't want it to feel like he had the status. These people,
it was goals. Yeah, it was.
was it Scholes?
And
I think Carragher was something similar.
Yeah.
These people, particularly ex-United players, obviously Carragher's ex-Liverpool, but they set themselves up as like judge and jury over like who gets to speak and who has status in the English game. And people like Myles just don't care, and a lot of fans don't care about what these people say, and that really bothers them. And so when Myles comes in, scores his amazing goal, has this like historic moment at such a young age, and has the temerity to slightly take the piss out of Erling Haaland, I'm like totally panic. And I think it was such I found it really disgusting and violent, collective, institutional energy from all these different bodies saying, "Who is this kid? Let's put him back in his place." And I think that comes from like such a horrible, ugly part of English or British society that cannot quite accept. Like another thing that Ian Wright said, sorry, I know I'm reading a lot from Ian Wright. He had a lovely line. Just try and find it. He's basically saying that what it was all about for him was showing what you could do, right? Not like some of that's about who he is, some of that's about, but for Myles, it's the same. Like for anybody who has any interest in football, to respond to Myles in any way other than just being completely captivated. Like this is to me, it's like he's not as good as Yamal, right? But it's a bit like responding. It's a bit like seeing Lamine Yamal onto the world stage at the Euros and doing everything that he was doing, and thinking, "Oh, this kid just seems a bit overconfident." Like, what are you talking about? What are you watching and why? Like, what are your investments?
What a part of the problem is when you bring up Yamal, when you bring up Lewis-Skelly, is a lot of people in a certain generation they've always accepted, for example, Barcelona are a top team and they've got top players and they always have success kind of thing. And a lot of people can't accept that Arsenal are back on the rise again. So that's one part of it where there's a pushback where it's like, that's impossible. How dare they have a player this good? How dare they develop a player this good? That's not right. That should not be happening. When you don't have to do a lot of digging to see that it's Arsenal tradition for us to do this sort of thing, kind of thing. Then on top of that, you mentioned race, you mentioned the institutional side of it, which again is underpinned by the way people look at race as well. And then you look at the wider sort of implications of the West, and I suppose let me just use Britain for example, and where a lot of people are politically and where they are in their own personal lives. You see an 18-year-old kid from London who is living absolutely carefree. He's so carefree with it, kind of thing, and that bothers you because you're having to fight against the corporations that are putting up the water bills, the the energy, all of these prices kind of thing, and then your one escape from it all, which is football, is now being made a mockery of because you're uncomfortable about somebody else coming in and upsetting some sort of fake status quo that you have in your head kind of thing. So all of these things that Carragher and Scholes are doing kind of thing, it's being propped up by these people that are unhappy in general kind of thing. So they don't even realize that they're feeding into something really, really vicious. 'Cause I don't even see it just from the white middle class, whatever, or working class, should I say. You see it from ethnic groups as well at this point now. It's just like, how have we allowed this to happen? It's that's what I feel like is the real cause of the sort of response that Lewis-Skelly has got, because it's gone beyond football tribalism. People are just looking for a means to exercise their frustration and feel better about their maybe not so fortunate lives. That's what I feel like it is, So
yeah, man, shit nastier than our fucking injury history, which I'm going to get back to right now. That was the most eloquent way of two people ever saying the under.
Can I'll
Go
just
ahead.
say one. I'll just say one more thing, like just in case anyone. I doubt it, but just in case anyone listening is like skeptical, you get people who, for whatever reason, are very resistant to thinking that like race is part of these kinds of issues or the dynamics governing them. The phrase that always sticks in my mind when I'm thinking about this is the phrase "Great White Hope," and that phrase comes from the hope that boxing fans had that some white boxer was going to come along and finally compete at a kid level.
Yeah.
But it's become sort of almost like normalized, and I just think, like, imagine. I think your point about Arsenal's, there's something in that, Coach. Like, I definitely agree with that, and I think that has to do with Arsenal's specific relationship with black people and black players, and what we've projected as a club over a long time. And Black Arsenal's a good place where that's kind of fleshed out.
You better give us a sponsorship after this podcast now.
But just imagine if Skelly was white.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, you don't have to. That's Cole Palmer.
he would be the Great White Hope. Like Phil Foden. Like they'd be the Great Young Hope or the Great White Hope until they were like 27 years old.
Yeah.
Turning into Mason Mount or whatever. Like it's completely implausible. You just would not get this. It's totally different, and particularly aggression, risk, confidence, these kinds of qualities that you see on the pitch. Those are, for certain people experiencing and unfortunately refereeing the game, they experience them really, really, really differently based on the skin color, I think. And that's, to be honest, like, in terms of my moment in the season, getting back to your question, Dean, it was a run that Lewis-Skelly went on in the Bernabeu. I think you probably remember, in the second half, picked the ball up in the left back position, dribbled past 4 or 5 of the greatest players in the world, and ended up creating a chance. I don't think we scored from it, but it was kind of in the build up to one of the goals. And yeah, it's that, like, fearlessness, aggression. I'm gonna body you. I don't care who you are. And you're totally, like, what you say, Coach, is totally right. Like, it really, I think it's interesting actually how much it bothers people on a visceral level that this kid is supposed to be miserable. Like, think about all the things that, when was he born? Early, like mid 2000s or late 2000s.
2008 or something.
The only thing that him and his community have known in the UK is cuts and austerity and closing down of public spaces, of defunding youth clubs, shutting down sports clubs, bigger class sizes. Like, it's ultimately a culture of neglect, that culture of austerity. And to see someone like Lewis-Skelly, I find it very moving every time I watch him, particularly when he's on form, but this season's pretty much always on form. But just the kind of spirit and that fearlessness that he brings to the game, I think. It actually I enjoyed it so much that it is actually very difficult to say that I didn't enjoy the season, even though the season was hard at times. Like, I haven't enjoyed one player emerging that much since
Saka.
Fabregas.
Fabregas. Oh wow. Okay. We'll take it. Oh yeah. The underbelly. It really brings out the poetry. I love it. Back to the shitty moments of the season real quick. We're going to rush through the rest of these. Saka got hurt. Jesus got hurt. That one was a low-key gut punch because he was looking to recover some form. He was looking useful again as Crystal Palace. Havertz, we already talked about him in Dubai. And Martinelli, that was a bit of a short-term one, but it happened. Then you add in the not buying anybody in the January window when it was clear beforehand that we needed somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Then was it during the window? I think we suffered injuries during the window and immediately after the window as well.
Martinelli, I think was Martinelli right after or during?
Right after as it closed, like
Yeah.
the day after it closed or something like that. And that was just, it's too much. Then we went to Brighton. There was a penalty given for a clash of heads. That was interesting. Then
that was good. I've seen a lot of those since. I keep seeing them never give.
I've seen
so many penalties for clash of heads.
Yeah, never seen that before. But Villa at home, we squandered a 2-goal lead. And that brings us to the next question, Coach. 21 points dropped from winning positions, joint most in league history for Arsenal, but also the best defense in the league. How do you square those two things?
We're very hard to beat. if we want to look at it from the deluded, eternal optimistic Arsenal fan side of things, we're very hard to beat. But with that being said, we are also we've struggled this season, I think, to win games basically when things haven't always gone our way. Don't get me wrong, we've won games where things have been shitty for us. It has happened this season, believe it or not. But for the most part, even if refs aside, injuries aside, kind of thing, when things just haven't gone our way, we've struggled. So it kind of tallies for me. It does tally up in a sense that Arsenal defensive structure, to me, especially after Inter's showing, we're undisputedly the best defensive team in the world. I don't think that can even be up for debate. We're never shipping 5 in a final to anyone.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. I'm hearing reports that Inter just conceded again. It's now 7-0.
He's certainly coming there.
He got me as well. I can't even lie. But yeah. So when Arsenal are able to defend the way they are, even with missing personnel kind of thing, it kind of lets me know that the system itself is really good. The other issue is the other end, the top end quality. The top end quality at the top end of quality is where you win those games that aren't going your way. And that's where I feel as if we're, us, dropping points and winning positions. Yeah, we can get ahead, but can we kill games when that quality will help you do that? Probably not, to be honest. Unless you're Real Madrid. But yeah, I do want to say though, my lowest point was the Fulham game. Like the Saka quote unquote winner. That was for me. That was when I don't think I've been lower under Arteta's reign than that particular moment. Then
it was
offside. Yeah.
From the
Martinelli
cross.
That fucked me up. Yeah. Seriously, I had to text my missus and say, do you know what? I'm not all right, so I'm just gonna need a bit of time. And I'm dead serious. I'm gonna need a bit of time basically because I was fucked up. Seriously.
That's a good thing, Coach. Because if I was capable of that, I'd have kids right now.
I think. Dean, can I just have a go at
Go ahead, please.
the question about losing leads? I just think, as much as like there needs to be signings next season that I'm sure we'll get onto. This season, it felt like I think a lot of this was to do with missing personnel as well. But I do think generally Arteta is he's always felt like he's slightly more conservative, not a lot, but slightly more conservative than I would like. And I think like what Coach is saying there about the defense. So like if you've got an absolutely amazing defense, and even if you think about the players involved, like if you've got Rice, Gabriel, Saliba, and at least one other absolute monster fullback behind you, trust it, and then let the others off the leash a little bit. Like I just think the risk needs to be a little bit higher going forward rather than always trying to keep the ball. And just at one goal up, we need to go for the throat. Like Liverpool won so many games 2-0 this season, and like I think their 2-0s are like the inverse of our like 1-1s or 2-2s. These like really disappointing results often at home. Yeah, I think that's basically my main frustration from the season in terms of I thought Arteta did an amazing job tactically, but particularly in the league, I think they left quite a lot of points on the table by not just assuming like we're much better than these, and if we lose the ball, we've got the best defenders in the world behind us. Like let's really go and get this game won. And I think that again that has like a knock-on effect on fitness and injuries, because if you get a good margin, particularly early in the game, if the game's dead, the other team loses interest, and you don't even need to bother with the rest of the game. You just pass it around.
Right.
That saves you a huge amount of physical strain as well. Like it's always on a knife edge, and I think strategically thinking, okay, we're goal up and our defense is amazing, so we'll sit back. That's a big mistake, I think, over the course of 38 games.
Yeah, well said. To be fair, the biggest defeat all season, which happened several times, was only ever by 2 goals. If Arsenal had a bad day, they lost 2-0. But typically they were usually drawing 1-1, which was annoying as shit. All right, let's get on to the player and manager review for the season. We're going to do some standouts, assess the manager in a little more detail, and discuss some player performance as well. Elliot, who's your player of the season? Or maybe a top 3, because I know it's a difficult year.
Top 3. Can you go to coach and let me think about this one?
All right, coach. Top 3 players of the season.
I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna do my best to go in order. So I'm gonna go Raya, Gabriel, Rice. And the reason why I put Gabriel above Rice is because even though he didn't finish the season, he was impeccable from day one. Rice took a bit of time to get going, but when Rice got going, fuck me, he got. But Raya also, despite some of the shaky moments in the second half of the season as well, I think he's pretty much been amazing since the word go. To be honest, we look as early as possible. I think the Villa game was the second or third game of the season. He won us that game. Forget the goals from 5 and Trossard. It was Raya that won us that game, 100%. And you need a few of those in the season, as we've seen in the Champions League, unfortunately, to get you through. So yeah, those would be my top 3.
Elliot, back to you, but we're gonna
Yeah.
spice up a bit.
Okay.
Which one of those 3 he mentioned, Raya, Gabriel, and Rice, would you drop for Julian Timber?
Ooh. I think it'd be Raya of the 3. I thought Raya was excellent. A little bit shaky towards the end of the season, but we probably just need someone else to cover for him in the odd game, so he doesn't get too tired. I love the Timber shout, particularly because I really didn't expect him to play as many minutes as he did, and yeah, he's just an awesome player. Like particularly in those Champions League games, I think that in some ways our team is kind of built for playing really good teams, and that's great. Like our record against the so-called top 6, I mean, what is the top 4 plus the 16th and 17th place teams when you describe the top 6? But like it's been ages since we lost to any of those lot, and in the Champions League, it's a narrow defeat at worst. I think Timber has a lot to do with that. He's like, yeah, and I think that reflects like, I think Timber's season would be a good point for Arteta to reflect and just be like, I've built a team that is just unbelievably hard to beat. Like the next step is to make it easier to win.
So buy a fucking striker in it.
You can buy about 6 strikers.
I'm okay with that. Okay, then follow-up question. So who would be your player of the season? You've had some time to think about it.
Probably Rice, I think. Yeah, it's close between Gabriel and Rice. It would be Myles. Myles played the full season. I think it's hard to give it to him because he really only came into the team during the second half. But yeah, Rice. Right, I think Rice's levels that he got to down the stretch was, like when Havertz was injured and it just felt like the season was completely done. Rice is basically the reason why we had the Champions League. Not only the free kicks, but obviously that was great as well. But yeah, he just really, really showed up, which is promising for next season as well. Like I don't actually mind if a player wants to have a sort of slightly slower, flatter start to the season as long as they really hit it after January. And yeah, he's just a hell of a player, isn't he? I don't know what else. You guys have covered Rice a lot. I know you love him, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, this is an open question to both of you, but I just think, what do you think teams are looking at when they see Rice in midfield and he's having a good day? What do you think their perspective is, and what they're trying to do to stop to stop him having his way, basically? Because from where I sit and where I've seen him, there isn't really much you can do. Like, genuinely, there isn't really much you can do to stop Rice when he's in full flow. So what do you think their experience is of trying to stop him, basically?
I guess you can try and put it over him, or you could try and pass around him. Like PSG, it's like short passing, getting moving, but try and control that movement.
But he eats up the ground. He
Yeah.
He eats up the ground so well, that boy.
Yeah, seriously. I think personally, what it is it's going to sound a little bit cliche considering some of the bad rep he gets, but teams will probably be like, okay, let's funnel the ball to him. But if you funnel the ball to Declan Rice, all that's going to happen is he'll just carry it then. So if you funnel the ball to him, okay, you just carry it past, all you other weaklings, and he'll lay it off to one of the more creative players, or he just takes a thunder bastard from like 30 yards. And so it's just like,
the shooting is a real problem. Like the fact that he's now scoring in open play, and yeah, I mean, I'm still traumatized from whatever visa-related shenanigans meant that we never watched Kolo Touré in an Arsenal kit for 15 years. No, Yaya Touré for 15 years. But I hope it's not blasphemous to say like Rice is heading in that direction. And
that's his idol. He said many times that's his idol, and you can see it. You can see. I think we are so lucky. Like, he was the obvious buy, obvious shout, most easiest win of the transfer window Arteta will probably ever have in terms of just a plug and play player kind of thing. But we are so lucky. Like, we can't understate. We are so lucky to have him.
It's not luck, okay? He costs money, all right?
No, of course,
If we didn't have money, there'd be no luck, okay?
Can I just say one thing that annoys me about the Rice is probably just a very online thing. I don't know how much like people out with Twitter.
It's very online.
But why do people go on about the captaincy and Rice? Who cares? Like, people obsessively trying to say, "Oh, Odegaard's had a bad game. Rice is the real leader," all this kind of thing. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, anytime you've watched a really good football team, do you even know who the captain is?
Not really.
Nobody cares. And it's actually, maybe it's good for Rice. Like, if that's something he wants to work towards, if it keeps him focused, or if it motivates him to demonstrate his leadership in other ways, that's great. There's more than I don't really get this investment in having always like the loudest, shoutiest guy.
It's that British culture thing you mentioned earlier. It's all part of the same bullshit, toxic mess. I will say though, no, I won't say it. Let's just move on. This is a good time to talk about Mikel. You'd mentioned sort of his emphasis on risk assessments, if you will, like not necessarily trusting his defenders, even though they were really good. What would you say is the next evolution in the team that you're hoping for? You sort of hinted at it, but maybe there's a more specific thing. Maybe it's a transfer that changes things. Maybe it's a style of play. Maybe it's switching to a double pivot. Like, what are you hoping to see soon?
So style of play, I think we need to speed it up, basically. Not all the time, but I think a lot of the time it feels like we're attacking so as not to lose the ball and to keep it in advanced areas where they can't hurt us and we can keep our shape. That's fine. Sometimes just go somewhere else. And I think speed, like I haven't seen the player enough, but I've heard that one thing that Zubimendi may do for us is provide much quicker balls out from the back of midfield. And I think if he's able to do that, not all the time. I think it's about varying that tempo so that sometimes Saka, Martinelli, whoever is wide or whoever's up front is really chasing the ball, and sometimes the other defense doesn't have time to get set. In terms of personnel, it's just like, do you want to do the transfers bit now in terms of Arteta's strategy?
Not
Like,
quite yet.
so
We'll get there
okay,
in a minute.
yeah, I'll save that point then, Coach. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that it's really funny the way the 22-23 season has been looked upon as the holy grail or the peak of our project among a certain sect of the fan base, and a lot of that came from us basically playing the ball really fast and playing not to the benefit of our actual own defensive structure. And I think Arteta has dialed it back and maybe gone back a bit too far, because a lot of that came from five just being the most vertical passer you've ever seen in your life, basically. And sometimes it cut teams open. We looked fast, ferocious kind of thing, and other times it left us a bit stranded with Zinchenko having to defend a 1v1 against Mo
But
Salah.
that's Zinchenko, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I think striking the balance with someone like Zubimendi, the ball's going to move with Zubimendi. It's going to move really quickly as well. Not even just vertically, but sometimes just the quick, sideways, lateral pass, whatever, just to get teams to draw you in kind of. And he's happy to receive it on either side, facing his goal, whatever, and it's just going to draw teams in, and that can open up space for whoever is in behind, because the ball might not come from Zubimendi, it might come from Timber, it might come from Lewis-Skelly, it might come from Saliba to get the ball forward. But the fact that he's able to move it quick enough, kind of thing, I think is the key thing there. You're not going to get that same level of activity from five, despite that being his forte 2-3 years ago. It's not the same, and I think Arteta has recognised that. And despite us talking about strikers and having to attack a different way, that's going to be key, regardless of who we have up front. Having that base of being able to move the ball quickly is really where the money's going to be earned for our strikers anyway, because they're going to be facing the goal, waiting to go anyway. It's just how quickly we can get the movement, So
Yeah, Elliot. One more follow up on Arteta. What was your? I think all of us here are very complimentary about him. I think we're all Arteta fans for the most part. Well, in large part for me, I'm not going to deny it. I'm a stan at this point. But what was your least favorite decision he made this season, or just what you think he needs to improve most for the sake of the club?
I think we're touching I think it's just the start, like the tempo thing is probably the main, and the sort of risk style. Once, like, yeah, in lots of games, I think when it comes to, so I think he's obviously got an issue with attacking recruitment. He just hasn't done enough of it. He prefers building from the back and squad building from the back as well. I think there's kind of two ways of looking at it. So lots of people are really obsessed with sort of getting the right striker or the best striker in the market, whatever. Obviously, I would love Arsenal to have some lights out, brilliant striker that can win games on their own, like a Van Persie or Thierry Henry. I think like a great plus point of like Arteta's football is that the system is clearly like the star, and so in some ways it's just a volume thing. Like we just need a lot more attackers, and if they went out and they've got a big competitive advantage in the market, France is going bust. Spain and Italy are desperate for cash. I would like to see him, certainly in the attacking part of the pitch, get a little bit less obsessed with like specific profiles. It has to be this person. It has to be this player. They do this, and that's gonna be the perfect fit in the team. Because I think what you've seen is actually like I don't really love Trossard, and he's not. You'd never say like Trossard is like the perfect fit for an Arteta team, I don't think. But if we had like a couple of other Trossards in the squad, we would have been in a much better place. Or a couple of other Martinellis. So I don't think it's that far off, and I think like there's a real that the strength of Arteta's management and how rigidly the players stick to the system gives you a lot of flexibility in recruitment to do that successfully. It doesn't need to be the perfect signing. If there's enough of them and they're at a certain level, I think that's what we've seen from Arteta, is that he can act like the back half of the season. That's why I take is like the stuff that guy managed to do with Marino up front was pretty amazing.
Yeah. I think there's a lesson to be learned here for us as fans. Also, Arteta's always learned a lesson as well, but to probably trust your gut a bit more. I think Arteta is, as much as he's a tactician and he's a mentalist, whatever, stuff like that. You can see in the way that the team set up. You can see a manager's sort of personality and the way that they think, in the way that he not only just starts his team, but the way he platforms them as well. I can say hand on heart, in the last 7-8 games of the season, including the Champions League games, I saw way more rotations from Saka, Martinelli, and everyone else than I did, all of the season prior, all of the season before the last 7-8 games, and the season prior as well. There was a lot more emphasis on fluidity of movement, basically. And people can say, "Oh yeah, it's too late now. Now he's learned his lesson, whatever." What do you want someone to do? Do you want them to keep doing the same thing over, or do you want them to learn and improve? You can be frustrated, but don't complain about it. Don't be annoyed at the fact that it's finally happening now. All that means is that we've done so well without doing this. Imagine what level we can go to with some new and better players, and with the current ones improving even more, improving their relationship. So I'm not particularly mad at the way things have gone in terms of Arteta's development himself and development of the team. If there is something I'm angry about, it's more about the unwillingness, probably from Arteta and the powers that be, to not kind of force his hand a little bit and say, "Look, we're signing a top level attacker, whether you like it or not," kind of thing, and you're going to work with them. So you pick which one that you want, but we're going to sign it, kind of thing. That's why I feel there's probably been a disconnect. He hasn't been challenged enough to be like, we're doing it, and you're going to work with this top level striker, basically, or whoever it is, or top level attacker.
You know what's really funny to me? Between you two and all the little typers on the internet with their little opinions about Arteta needing to be challenged, let me tell you something about that 5'8" Spaniard. None of you have the fucking cojones, okay? Say that shit to his face. I dare you. I double. He will whoop your ass, boy. All right, let's go on.
I was just going to say, I think part of the reason why, and it's funny because just today alone, we saw Forest being linked to 3 completely unknown Brazilians that are literally, it's a triple deal, basically, that they're apparently going to get for these players. And since Berta has been taken over, the only Brazilian we've been linked to is someone that's been in Europe since he was like 17 years old. So I think that's a positive in that regard. And I think there's clearly a shift in focus into what sort of targets we're being linked to. Guys, I haven't seen a Joel Hato link in months. I haven't seen a link to a defender in months, to be honest. It's only been attackers.
No, there was the Dean Howson link, which I quite liked.
I'm ignoring that. Sorry.
I say on the I think the Saka point and the point about flexibility in advanced positions is a really good one. I think there's a bit of it's not a decision, but I thought it was really interesting the interview that Salah gave when they won the league, and he said Slot had come in, and it's particularly interesting in light of like the whole Mbappe conversation around the Champions League final and how PSG evolved and all that, because obviously they tried to get Mbappe to press and take part in the sort of off the ball system, and he just isn't interested in doing it. I think there's a balance that you can strike, and I think with Saka it's interesting because he's not going to necessarily push for it, I don't think, at this point. But I think basically with Saka, we rely on him loads to progress the ball as well as finish and create. And there's just so much dependency on him to do all that. And that means that he's in different areas of the pitch and he's doing lots of work. And then that's the on-ball stuff. And then there's the defensive side of it as well. I think in terms of like that risk style and bringing more flexibility, like I'd love to see, even if it's just for Saka, to have greater flexibility where he is playing a bit more inside, moving back outside sometimes. and just a little bit less defensive responsibility just to keep them that bit fresher. I know I've got lots of Arsenal support friends who see this as sort of cardinal sin that you would ever question the system and this kind of thing. I think right now, as it is, like, unless I don't even know unless you sign like Vinny Jr. or something, like Saka's our guy. Like, if anybody's gonna have a season like Salah for Liverpool, the equivalent for Arsenal is going to be Saka, and that could look slightly different. Maybe it's not quite so much like headline output, goals and assists, but there's something about how his role evolves, and like it's not even a criticism of Arteta, but I think that there's lots of brilliant things about Saka, but his versatility is astonishing. And yeah, he's always in that role. And yes, he's very good as the wide right attacker, but I don't think we're quite using how intelligent he is and how versatile he is to move across different roles in the pitch at different phases of the game to surprise defenses, particularly in those bigger games. So I'd like to see something like that, and that will depend obviously on the balance of like who comes in, who's on the left, what Odegaard is or isn't doing. But I'd like to see more flexibility there to free him up, basically.
Well said. I imagine that's not an uncommon opinion among Arsenal fans that don't tweet. Let's do some very quick player evaluation. So here's how we're going to do this. It's going to be quick hits. I'm going to mention a name and a score. These scores come from the SPS Arsenal Brain Trust. Everyone that's appeared on the podcast this year gave a ranking for a player out of 10. And I collated everything, and I'm going to give you the numbers, each of you at random. You're just going to respond with whether you think that's too high or too low or just right. That's it. We're just playing the Goldilocks game. All right, here we go. Hi, folks. Sorry to interrupt. It's Dean here. We realized after we finished recording this with Elliot that we were having so much fun that the recording lasted for about the length of an actual football game. So it made sense for us to split it up into two halves. So we hope you've enjoyed this half of the show. You can expect the next half of it in another day or two. So it won't be a long wait. On that second half of the show, we're going to talk about the players, ratings, rankings, assessments. We're going to assess Arteta as well, in addition to what we've already talked about. We're going to talk a little bit about transfers. We know that's why you're really here. Talk about some squad building stuff, some off-field stuff, some bird's eye versus Adu type stuff, and the final assessment and overall score for the season, along with some off-field chatter as well. So we hope you've enjoyed this half of the show. And we look forward to you joining us on the second half of the show. And we guarantee that it'll be as much fun as this first half was. Thanks for rocking with us. Talk to you soon.